And once I've gone in and I've added the detail that I need to add and whatnot, I can really go in and start to add some detail to the background. So I'm going to add a few adjustment layers to this global section. The first one I'm going to add after the hue saturation, and you can go in and play with the order of these, is I'm going to add a gradient map. Now what a gradient map is going to do is it's going to take one color of the gradient and put into the shadowed areas. It's going to take the other color of the gradient and put into the highlight areas, and then it's going to blend those together. Now the way that I like to do it is that I'm choosing a gradient, and you can choose whatever colors you want. I usually choose a cooler color for the shadows, so something like a darker blue for the shadows. And then highlights are usually warmer, so I'll pick a yellow, like a lighter color yellow for the highlights. Click OK, and then I'll change my blending mode of this, usually to either overlay or soft light. And then you can control the opacity of that effect. I'm going to turn that down a little bit so we see kind of before and after. You can turn that up or down, and you can even go back in and play with those colors. The next one I'm going to put on here is just kind of more of a toning adjustment. I'm going to add a color balance, and if I wanted to cool it off anymore, I could do that. Or if I wanted to warm it up overall, I could do that as well. I kind of like that right there, and you can see the effects of that. And then the last adjustment that I'll add is a levels adjustment, and I can kind of soften that up, maybe clip a couple of the blacks out, brighten it up a little bit, or either darken it down a little bit. And you can just kind of do this to your taste. And then the last thing that I may add is another hue saturation, and then just turn the overall saturation down just to give it kind of more of an intense feel. You don't have to do that, and then you can control the opacity of that if you want to, or even the blending mode of it. Alright, now the last thing that I like to do to this is to give it a sense of depth. This is not something that you have to do, but I will show you how to do it. This is how you create I call it a false depth of field. And then pretty much just to explain it a little bit, what I want to do is I want to gradually throw this background out of focus while keeping my subject in focus. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go to my channels panel, and I want to create a new alpha channel. I'm going to turn these back on so I can see them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to build an alpha channel, which I will then use with the lens blur filter. So everything that's solid white is going to be what's blurred the most. Everything that's black is what's going to not be blurred at all. And then a gradual transition between black and white will gradually be thrown out of focus the closer it gets to white, and gradually be pulled into focus as it goes to black. So let's look at how we build this. One way we can do it is go to our gradient tool, and I'm just going to use a gradient white to black to white. And I'm going to use my gradient tool, and I'm basically just going to drag this along this plane, and I'm paying attention to this over here. Okay, so this is what I see. Everything that's on that plane is going to be in focus. If you don't like it, undo it. Now the problem I'm going to have is I need this guy to be in complete focus while throwing the background out of focus. So the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to go to my layers. I'm going to find the Walker layer, and I'm going to hold down Command, click on this thumbnail, and that's going to load a selection around these pixels. I'll go back to my channels, and I'll use this selection, and I will fill this selection with black. So this is what my channel is going to look like when I'm finished. It's going to look like this. Everything that's black is going to be in focus. Everything that's white is going to be thrown out of focus. Now my gradient's off a little bit. I'd go back if I wanted to and fix that, but for right now I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to name this channel DOF, which basically stands for depth of field. And I'm going to go back to my levels, or my layers panel. Now this filter has to be applied to some pixel, so you have to have pixels in order to apply it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a merged visible copy of all of my layers, which are going to be just all my layers merged together. Shortcut key to do this is Shift Option Command E, and you're going to get a layer that's a merged copy. So I'm just going to name this lens blur, and I'm going to take this lens blur layer and I'm going to go to filter, blur, lens blur, and when this pops up, what I'm going to do is for my depth map I have to choose a source. That source is going to be pulled from my channels panel, and I'm going to use my DOF channel. And when I do that, this is going to be what I get. And I can change the intensity of this focus by turning down my radius or turning up my radius. If I want it to be more intense, I turn it up. If I want it to be less intense, I turn it down. And I think that this right here for this particular one looks pretty good. I'm going to click OK. And that right there is pretty much your just basic composite. Now we could go into a lot more depth than this, but that should be enough to get you started on taking different elements from different images and building something that looks believable.